Another update to a story we have been following very closely over the last several days with a lot of different developments here. Google now revealing that a group linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guard tried to hack into the personal email accounts of roughly a dozen people linked to President Biden and former President Trump over the course of just the last 3 months. The tech company says the group's still actively targeting people who are associated with Biden, Trump, and Kamala Harris, including current and former government officials and presidential campaign affiliates. The new report expands on Microsoft's report released last week. We told you about it, as it revealed suspected Iranian cyber interference in this year's U.S. presidential election. Trump's campaign revealed over the weekend that it had been hacked and that sensitive internal documents were stolen and distributed, declaring Iran was to blame. So much to discuss here, so do want to bring in an expert to help break it down. Ryan Ellis is an associate professor of communication studies at Northeastern University. His research and teaching focusing in part on cybersecurity. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and even try to break some of this down.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, first off, I do want to talk about your overall thoughts on these reports that we've now seen from Microsoft and Google coming out just days apart that essentially say the same thing. What are your overall thoughts on that?
Well, it's worrisome, of course. We don't want foreign actors meddling in our elections, but it's not terribly surprising. We saw 2016, 2020 elections here in the US as well as elections abroad, that this is something that happens. We see foreign attempts to interfere and influence elections. So it's not super surprising, but it is worrisome for sure.
What motivation does Iran have overall to try to hack or influence the U.S. presidential election? I know that's kind of probably a tough question to answer, but what sort of motivation is there?
It's a tough question to answer, but it's like the most important question in many ways, to try and understand the motivations and the strategy. Right now, we probably don't have enough information to definitively say, but we can, with some degree of speculation, suggest there's lots of different things that they may, or other foreign actors may be up to. They might be looking to foster and increase the divisions that already exist in the country. They might be looking to spread disinformation by mixing in both true and untrue information in any leaked documents that might be forthcoming. They might be looking simply to gather information about the campaigns to understand their strategies and what their policies might look like going forward. You can kind of separate this out between the hack and leak operation. Governments collect information on other governments all the time, on current officials, former officials, potential future officials. That's unremarkable. It's understandable, and it's something that we fight against, we push back against, of course. Hacking and leaking is a little different, right? That's where the strategy changes. It's not just trying to understand an adversary, understand what's going on inside a government or a future government. It's trying to some way also influence the shape of domestic politics here in the United States. So you can kind of separate the two things into the hack operation and hacking and leaking. Like I said, collecting information on a rival government happens all the time. The leaking is a little different, right? It suggests a different strategy. What that might be, we don't really have enough information to tell yet. It could be to embarrass, could be to inflame divisions. It could be try to shape the narratives of the next few months. We just don't know yet. It's a little too early to tell.
And kind of on that same note, we know from the Microsoft report that some of the possibilities included some fake news sites that were set up. And that was more so, I guess, to influence the people out there, the voters. And they were fake sites, but with some believable stories, I guess.
Yeah, I think moving forward, so far we don't really know what they got, right? We don't fully understand what information they're able to access and collect. There's been some reporting that some of the information might have been sent to Politico, the New York Times, and Washington Post relating to the vetting of the VP candidate, but we haven't seen Microsoft, Google, or someone like the FBI connect the dots and say, yes, this is where that information came from. So that's still a little bit of a speculative connection. But we don't really know what they got. But one thing to keep an eye out on moving forward is if this becomes a sort of full-blown hack and leak operation where a foreign adversary is leaking information, is to be on the lookout for the mixing of both true and untrue information, right? You get sort of insider information that is accurate and verifiable, and it can be also mixed with altered information that looks credibly like it could be true, but could in fact be altered. So verifying if and when this information makes its way out to the public, or if it makes its way out to news outlets. It's going to be very important that they're able to verify what is accurate versus what is deliberate disinformation, essentially.
We know that the information that's been released by Microsoft and Google is pretty much more than we've heard from the U.S. government. So why would the tech companies put this out? And do they need permission from anyone in the U.S. government to actually release that information?
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me too much, to be honest. On the one hand, Microsoft and Google, it's their infrastructure, it's their technical tools, it's their networks that are being used to try to launch these attacks and also be subverted inside, right? So this is probably the hacking of Gmail accounts, Google Docs, right? These are both like the techniques and tools they're using to try to induce campaign members to click on malicious links or to cough up credentials. So their technical infrastructure is where the attack is being staged. So it's not surprising they would have great sort of frontline insight into what's going on here. So I'm not surprised, and it makes good sense that they would be the ones providing a lot of the initial technical details, right? We don't have the U.S. government closely monitoring that sort of traffic inside the country. Google and Microsoft have a front row seat to what's going on. In terms of like, do they need permission? As you can see, like the initial report from Microsoft and Google was fairly circumspect. They don't say which particular, for example, former campaign members' account may have been compromised. They do not confirm what information has been taken. What they're really trying to do is raise the flag, alert the public that this is going on, indicate and provide some indications for other tech companies and the campaigns themselves about steps they might want to take to defend themselves and things to be on the lookout in the future. Now, I do believe that they would need some permission, not from the U.S. government, but from the campaigns themselves to go further. For example, to indicate, okay, well, here's the account that was hacked, and provide more information along those lines. But right now, I think it's not terribly surprising to see that they're being the ones on the front line. This is where the attack is staged. They would be the ones to provide a lot of the initial technical details. Going further than that, with more specifics, they might need permission, not of the government, but of the campaigns themselves.
As far as what happens next, obviously we do know that investigations are underway. We're going to have all sorts of top secret information that isn't necessarily released. But why is it so important for the American people to know that all of this is going on, and for Americans to pay attention as we are just months away from the presidential election?
Yeah, and it's shaping up. It looks like it's going to be a very close election, so everything kind of matters, right? Big and small. And so I understand why people are nervous and anxious. We don't want foreign adversaries interfering in our election. And in some level, if we look to the past, the way they can be successful, we're looking at the strategies that have used in the past, is if we allow them to, right? If we allow them to inflame divisions, if we are credulous and quick to believe disinformation, if we repeat and spread that disinformation. These are the sorts of things and the reasons why we should be alert and why we should have a heads up. For average voters like me, keeping your eyes open, being skeptical when you see things shared on social media that sort of defy belief, all those are good strategies. But really, for those in the press, it's a fairly big burden of responsibility for them to try to sort out what is newsworthy here, what's important for the public to know, what is deliberately spread disinformation versus what is newsworthy information.
My last question here, is this really something new, or has Iran attempted to interfere in U.S. elections before? Because I feel as though this has happened in the past.
Yeah, it'd be certainly foreign adversaries trying to interfere. I mean, we all remember 2016, Russian collection of information from the Clinton campaign and sort of released it. It would appear through WikiLeaks. That's fresh still in most of our minds. We also saw attempts with less visibility or less degree of success, I suppose. So I'm not sure how you judge those things in 2020. So it's not surprising. It's not particularly new. Iran being an adversary involved in this sort of stuff is also not new. This is what foreign governments often do. So no, it's not terribly new, but that doesn't mean it's not important. It's not something to keep an eye on. And it's not something that's worrying.
Nope, all very true. All right, Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today and break it all down. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
Nope, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Happy to chat anytime.
All right, have a good rest of your day.